Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another New Jersey Constitutional Republican Conversation, virtual conversation. Hopefully we'll be able to have these conversations in person soon, Doctor. But it's we're very pleased and privileged tonight to have Dr. Kathleen Ruddy, physician, a doctor. She's done outstanding work in breast cancer research and in helping to stop breast cancer. And she'll introduce herself. But Doctor, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And Dr. Ruddy had seen a video that I had done with Maria Tazy of Right to Life, and she inquired about joining us for a New Jersey Constitutional Republicans virtual conversation. I'm very glad that she did. And Doctor, give us a brief bio about yourself and introduce yourself to our audience this evening.
I'm a breast cancer surgeon. I did my training at Memorial Sloan Kettering, finishing my fellowship in 1995. I then worked for Cancer Treatment Centers of America for 3 years, and then a hospital of the Barnabas Healthcare System in New Jersey, which is the largest healthcare system in New Jersey, recruited me to establish and direct their breast service. And so I did that. And then about 8 years into my practice, I put a pause and went to McGill University and did an International Masters for Healthcare Leadership. And at the same time became involved in research on the breast cancer virus. When I returned, I continued to focus my efforts on bringing the research concerning the breast cancer virus forward, and have now, in the past few years, and particularly with COVID, begun to wind down my surgical practice. I was sitting in church about 4 months ago, St. Vincent Martyr Catholic Church in Madison, where I live. And I was reading the bulletin, and there was an article that said there was a bill in the New Jersey legislature, an abortion bill, that would remove the conscience clause so that physicians would be mandated to perform abortions. And I thought, that can't possibly be true. And so as soon as I got home, I pulled the bill up. You know, being a surgeon trained at Memorial Sloan Kettering, you go right to the source, you go right to the literature, never mind the headlines. Right. So I went right to the bill and I started reading through the bill, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This is insane. This is impossible. You can't force me or anyone to perform an abortion. Oh no, they were going to force you to perform abortions. And at that point, I made it my business to study the bill and study the proposed changes in the Board of Medical Examiners regulations that would support this bill, the Reproductive Freedom Act. And the more I read, the more alarmed I became. And within, a couple of hours, I was like, something has to be done here. And so I began to reach out to whatever pro-life groups there were in New Jersey. I contacted probably a dozen and got involved with a dozen different organizations. And it was at that point that I had to both conduct my own research and provide myself an education with regard to abortion in the country, in New Jersey. So I bought books and I read cases and so on and so forth. And I went back and I studied the Reproductive Freedom Act more closely. I tried to figure out what exactly was going on, because it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense. The Reproductive Freedom Act, we'll just call it the RFA because that's shorthand.
Right. And that's also Dr. S3030 and A4848.
Those are the
for,
one in the Senate, one in the Assembly, right?
right. And that's what the people want to remember and write down so that when you call
Yeah.
your representatives
Yeah.
after hearing this broadcast, you're going to refer to
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
as S3030, A4848, the Reproductive Freedom Act.
Right.
But go ahead, Doctor, please.
You know, I was reading through the RFA and lots of things did not make sense. It is marketed and headlined and presented to the public as legislation that will address a great unmet need. It proposes to help iron out inequality and social injustice and preserve a woman's right to choose her reproductive rights.
Which already exists in the state.
Well, but the implication is that whereas the country, based on Roe v. Wade, one can assume that the country, certainly the Supreme Court, given its decision with Roe, supports the idea that a woman has the right to choose whether or not to terminate her pregnancy. The RFA presents itself as trying to fulfill that mandate, that there's an unmet need, that New Jersey is somehow bringing up the rear when it comes to a woman's right to choose. So I looked into what were the statistics, what's the data, right? Data-driven medicine, evidence-based medicine, what's the data? So I looked to see what was the story, what's the state of play with regard to abortion in New Jersey. And New Jersey performs more abortions than any other state in the country. New Jersey does on average, twice as many abortions as is done on average in any other state in the country. So automatically, like, wait a second, what is this great unmet need if you're doing more abortions than anybody else? 48,000, about a little over 48,000, based on, I believe it's the 2019 data set, which I think is the most recent we have. So 48,000 abortions. So I thought, well, the RFA can't be legislation which is trying to address a great unmet need. How can there be a great unmet need here? But let's just say, for the sake of argument, you thought it was ideal to increase the number of abortions in the state of New Jersey by 20%. That would be another 10,000. So keep that 10,000 number in your mind for a moment. Because then I said, well, if the RFA is not really addressing a great unmet need, then is this a jobs bill? That was my next question. There's got to be money in hands. I mean, I grew up watching Watergate unfold. I mean, I saw,
I both.
I saw Oswald get shot on TV. I saw the moonshot. Apollo 11.
That's our generation.
All of that, and I actually watched day to day and read the Washington Post. I was living in the Washington, D.C. area at the time. So I followed, the Watergate. And so follow the money. So I'm like, okay, this is not about addressing the need for more abortion in New Jersey. This got to be a money thing. So is this a jobs bill? So again, let's go back to the 10,000. If we're going to increase the number of abortions by 20%, we're going to add another 10,000. How much money is changing hands? Well, I looked at the ICD-10 code for abortion. That's the insurance code. I'm familiar with insurance codes. So I looked at the insurance code. What is the ICD-10 code for abortion? And then I would look to see the fee schedule, because the insurance companies will pay XY for an abortion. What do they pay? On average, they pay $700. $700 per abortion. Now the overhead, the typical overhead cost in a medical practice, a facility, whatever, is about 40%. So they're netting about $400 per abortion. That's not a lot of money. It's not no money, but it's not a lot of money. Now, if you multiply $400 net by 10,000, right, you come up with $4 million. This is not a jobs bill, I said. There's not a jobs bill. If I wrote you a check for $4 million, you would notice, you would say, thank you very much, Dr. Ruddy. But $4 million around the state of New Jersey, I mean, that's not even a bonus for the guy who lives down the street. Okay.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's not a jobs bill. So then I thought, where's the money here? Where's the money here? Because this is being promoted and pushed aggressively. So where's the money changing hands? And it took me a couple of days. I was just like, I don't get it. I really don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
Then let's go back because I studied again the details of the RFA. So let's just go through that a little bit in expanded fashion.
Sure, yeah.
So part of the RFA is to expand abortion through the full 9 months of pregnancy, on demand, for every woman who is in New Jersey or comes to New Jersey. How she gets here doesn't matter. If she comes here, she can have an abortion on demand through the full 9 months of pregnancy. Then I see that there's a great effort, especially on the part of the Board of Medical Examiners, whose changes in regulations are greatly facilitating the bill. And the Board of Medical Examiners will now allow, supposedly will allow, non-physicians to perform abortions through the full 9 months of pregnancy. Will allow.
So they're compromising the integrity of the medical professionals, which initially was one of the reasons that they wanted to, the Roe v. Wade became law. That was the thinking of the court even, to stop the so-called backstreet abortions and so forth. So now they're even compromising that. And you're building this up to why this is happening.
Well,
I just want the audience to know that.
Well, right. So let's just stay here understanding what the medical board is trying to do here. So they're going to expand the number of people who can perform abortions into non-physicians. And common sense. I mean, the people at Garden State Mall will be able to tell you that non-physicians performing abortions might not be the safest thing. Okay, right. And a lot of physicians and surgeons will tell you it's probably not a good idea. Okay, then there is the provision that would allow abortions to be done in a medical office setting. So not a clinic, not a hospital, an office. Then there's the very, very interesting provision, which changes the definition of abortion from what is commonly referred to as a minor surgical procedure to just a procedure. And I scratched my head for a couple of hours. I was like, there's got to be a reason for this. Why are they going to trouble and putting in this in black and white that we're going to change it from minor surgical procedure to minor procedure? And then I was like, banged my head against the wall. And I said, I should know, I'm a surgeon. I should know this right off the top of my head, because your medical malpractice premiums are predicated on what you do. And you are filling out a medical malpractice form, you want medical malpractice insurance, and you say you're just doing procedures, medical procedures, whatever, drawing blood. Your medical malpractice premium might be $14,000 a year. But if you are a general surgeon doing minor surgery, your medical malpractice premium will be on average $44,000 a year. So that looks to me like a way to reduce overhead. The whole thing looks like a way to reduce overhead. Get non-physicians doing it in the office, play around with the definition of what an abortion is. Oh, by the way, you can run into a great deal of trouble, because as soon as I had that as a thought, I got in touch with the medical malpractice carriers. And I thought, what if a nurse practitioner, out of the goodness of her heart, she believes that women should have a right to an abortion, and she's not taking the course, whatever, and she's going to perform an abortion, and she's filling out her medical malpractice application, and she writes down that she's just doing procedures, not minor surgical procedures. What if something goes wrong? She's going to be caught in a very tight corner because the medical malpractice insurance company and the underwriters are going to go, that's fraud. Okay, that's fraud. The patient's going to want to know where she's getting her compensation. You can see this is a problem. Okay.
Right.
So we've got the expansion of abortion on demand through the full 9 months of pregnancy to anybody who happens to cross the state border. We have a concerted effort to reduce the overhead at risk of patient safety and so on and so forth.
Number 2.
Right. What else do we have here? We have something here that whether or not you care in the least about the ethics of abortion, you're going to want to pay attention to this. In the bill, there is a mandate that all the insurance companies have to cover the abortion. You know, you can't opt out, okay? You've got to cover it. So the insurance companies must cover the procedure.
Right.
The women
this is in addition to Planned Parenthood, because many of our listeners, many of us talk about Planned Parenthood, defunding Planned Parenthood. And this is something that you taught me, was that it's the insurance companies, our insurance companies that we pay into that are providing and paying for these abortions, correct?
Yeah, they in many cases they will. I mean, but let's just look at that health insurance piece of the bill. Okay, this is the provision. All the insurance companies in the state of New Jersey must cover abortion. Right. Okay, fine, whatever. The women who seek abortion are not going to have to pay a dime. Their copays, their deductibles, their co-insurance, all of it exempt. So what you have a patient, now wouldn't you love not to have to pay your copay? Not to have to pay your $5,000 deductible, your co-insurance, whatever. But the woman who's seeking an abortion, okay, the woman who seeks an abortion, 48,000, whatever, plus however more they want, they can bring into the state, gets to have it essentially cost-free. However, again, let's go to Garden State Mall and ask the people walking up and down the mall, do you think the insurance companies are going to eat those costs? Do you really think so? No. So what we have here, a moment's reflection, we have a transfer of wealth via a covert operation whereby the costs of providing abortions under the RFA are laundered through the insurance company to the consumer. Because I can assure you, your copay is going to go up and my copay is going to go up. Okay? Right. The insurance companies aren't going to eat the cost. Okay? And they can't pass it on back to the woman who's had the abortion. And the whole idea of copays and co-insurance, my sister did a graduate work at Hospital Corporation of America, and she was the one who pointed this out to me. The whole idea of co-insurance and copays is to keep you out of the doctor's office. They say, oh, it's so that you can assume responsibility. No, it's a disincentive. They don't want you there, okay? They want you to think twice about being there, right? So you have a disincentive for the women seeking abortion, but those costs, that payola, okay, that's going to fund the abortion bill, yeah, that's going to come right back. You're going to see it in an envelope. Your premium has gone up, your copay has gone up, and guaranteed, they're going to say, oh, it's COVID related. It's the cost of COVID. They're not going to say it has to do with the RFA. Okay.
Right.
So
doctor, let me just interject. So what this does, what this means is that the state and the Democrats and those who support abortion don't have to go to the taxpayers to subsidize the abortion or fund Planned Parenthood. Yeah. It's going to be done right through your insurance company, whether you like it or not.
It's a shakedown. It's a shakedown by the insurance companies. Okay. Mandated by the governor and Weinberg. Oh, by the way, let's keep in mind, this is my conviction. I don't have proof, but this is my conviction.
Right.
The governor and his wife, I do not believe, were visited by an angel of the Lord, and out of the compassion of their heart decided that what they needed was to bring forth the RFA to meet the needs of women who were not getting abortions on demand in the state of New Jersey. Okay. It looks to me that our governor, who's an ex-Goldman Sachs guy, is taking orders from central headquarters. Now, I don't know where central headquarters is. I don't know where central command is, but this whole thing is rolled out, sponsored by Planned Parenthood, right? I mean, here's the press release, and Planned Parenthood is all there with the balloons or whatever. And it just seems like somebody got a telephone call, do this. And other people got telephone calls, do this. And if there's any pushback, look the other way and stay on point. This is for reproductive freedom and blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Right.
Now, okay. So now let's look at the money, because we think there's not a great need for more abortions in New Jersey. We know it's not a jobs bill because $4 million, whatever. Okay, it's not a lot of money. Where's the money? Where's the money? Where's the money? Remember, Watergate, all the president's men, deep throat in the parking lot, in the basement parking lot, follow the money. And so a couple of days later, I was like, where's the money? Where's the money? And then I thought, maybe there's money in fetal tissue. Maybe that's what's going on here. How much money is there in fetal tissue? Well, yeah. Now, there's a law that was passed many years ago. It's the Uniform Anatomic Gift Act. And it prohibits, it makes it a federal crime to sell fetal tissue. Okay. So when Daleiden busted Planned Parenthood for their prideful boasting that they were performing abortions in such a way to be able to get this kind of money, blah, blah, blah. Planned Parenthood came out, we don't sell body parts. We don't sell fetal tissue. We're not allowed to. Okay. Let me explain to you what the arbitrage is here, folks. This would bring tears to the eyes of Gordon Gekko. Okay. Yeah. The fee for picking up a little blue container on ice of fetal tissue is about $60. Okay. Now STEM Express and Advanced Bioresources, they're going to pick this up, or their agents, and they're going to process the fetal tissue. Now, a tiny vial of fetal liver stem cells, they processed. Okay, this is just the little liver. This is just a tiny piece of fetal stem cells from the liver. Goes for how much money? What do you think? $24,000. $24,000, and that was 5 years ago.
Unbelievable.
So you pick up the fetus for $60, and you sell the little tiny bit of what you process out of the liver for $24,000. Now we're talking money. Okay, what are you going to get in the later term abortions for an entire heart? 2 lungs, 2 kidneys, a liver, a spleen, the small intestine where there's a lot of lymphatic tissue, the skin, the brain, the spinal column. What are you going to get for all that? That's real money.
So doctor, just let me interject. So this provides the impetus to supporting the idea of allowing abortions to children and to pregnancies that have reached their term.
Well, you can see, okay, we're going to zero in on that. We're headed, we see the runway here. Okay. So let's organize the instruments for a steady, safe landing here, because now we know that's where the money is and there's a lot of it. And then I think, okay, well, how much money is spent on fetal tissue research? So I do a Google search, scientific articles, I want to know. 17,400 scientific articles come up on a Google search just in the past 18 months on fetal tissue harvesting. 3,300 articles on international fetal tissue procurement. Okay. The United States government, the NIH, in 2019, I believe 2019, spent $100 million funding fetal tissue research. Where is it coming from? Well, it's coming from fetal tissue. Where is fetal tissue coming from? It's coming from abortions. Now, here we have a supply chain problem that further explains, I think, the big push here in the Garden State. Approximately 1/3 of abortions now are carried out using pharmacologic agents, drugs, pills. The woman comes, she wants an abortion, first 3 months of pregnancy, they give her some pills, she goes home, she aborts. The fetus, the tissue goes down the drain. It's gone. So 1/3 of your supply chain, we know about supply chains now, right? We know how hard was it to get masks and hand sanitizers, you know, and toilet paper last year, okay? You disrupt a supply chain, the shelves are empty. 1/3 of the fetal tissue that was coming into the pipeline is gone. The number of abortions in general is down for the past 10 years, at least, all across the country. We have many states in the country that have implemented very severe restrictions on a woman's access, particularly to abortion after the first trimester. So you have a contraction in inventory, you have an increasing demand, okay? And you have a garden state, which has the best non-regulations governing fetal tissue sale in the country. Now, let's talk about the regulation in the state of New Jersey that governs fetal tissue disposition. Okay, so you would think abortion should be covered by the Board of Medical Examiners, and there should be something about this in the RFA. I could find nothing. I was losing my mind. I was trying to find, okay, where is the provision that describes and defines and regulates fetal tissue? Okay, it's in the Department of Energy and Commerce. It took me 2 days and 2 librarians. And I'm not someone who necessarily likes to read administrative code, I can tell you. I can pour through scientific literature, but really when it comes to like bureaucracy, I start to like, my aneurysms blow all over the place.
Yeah, it's tough.
So here I find the one provision in the New Jersey Administrative Code that governs fetal tissue. And oh, P.S., I have to tell you this. I called the governor, I called my senator, I called my assemblyman. I said, I got on the phone, I said, do you have a copy of the administrative code? Nobody has a copy of the administrative code. I'm like, how can you people run the state and you don't even have the administrative? No, we don't. Okay. So anyway, 2 librarians later, I get what I'm looking for, the regulations that govern the disposition of fetal tissue in the New Jersey Code, Energy and Commerce. Yeah. One tiny little thing says blah, blah, blah. You know, you have to like give it to a regulated agency or whatever, you know, someone who's regulated in that business. In the RFA, there's a provision that deletes that and replaces it with nothing. Okay. Now we've got a Wild West show going on here in New Jersey.
And Doctor, let me just interject. When you're saying the RFA, this is the Reproductive Freedom Act.
Right.
And it's S3030 A4848. This is the legislation that Phil Murphy and Loretta Weinberg have wanted to push through. They've used all these different, really what we could call smoke screens in many ways to identify the importance of this law because they're afraid, they think that Roe v. Wade could be overturned. But the doctor's pointing out the real motivation that could be providing the impetus for the desire, and now it's becoming more desperate for the Democrats to pass this bill.
Right, because I think that there is not only a lot of money on the table, and I would conjecture, I would put forth the hypothesis that it is the money that is driving the bill, okay? That's what's driving the bill, in my opinion. It's the fetal tissue harvesting industry is the money behind the bill. That's what it looks like to me. And it's big money.
Quite
and it's
something to think about. That's quite something for the people to think about.
Well, and especially if you know the fact that we're picking up the tab for it. We're picking up the tab, okay? So they're going to do this great arbitrage, this covert operation where they launder money through the insurance companies that we have to pay for it. And it's going to benefit 2 interest groups. Wealth transfer for 2 interest groups. The abortion industry, Planned Parenthood, okay? Which is a tapeworm in the belly of the state budget. It's a tapeworm in the belly of the country. And the fetal tissue harvesting industry, which is a cancer. Okay, I'm a cancer surgeon. I know a tumor when I see it. So taken all together, I've come to the conclusion, and this is my hypothesis, prove me wrong. Okay, go ahead and prove me wrong, but not by talking trash. Okay, because I want to see documentation for chain of custody of fetal tissue in New Jersey. By the way, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection allows the importation of fetal tissue. So when Biden basically opens up Planned Parenthood funding, federal dollars to Planned Parenthood to perform abortions offshore, that smells to me like increasing the supply chain. Bring in the toilet paper, bring in the fetal tissue, and fund Planned Parenthood to do it, the tapeworm. So altogether, this looks like a fetal tissue harvesting development plan. And what I would say to women who believe that women have a right to an abortion, I would say, amend the Constitution, okay? We, women, did not have the right to vote until we amended the Constitution. We had the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed the slaves, okay? If you want and you believe that women should have the right to an abortion, amend the Constitution, okay? Don't be doing this nonsense, because we're not going to pay for it. You're not going to get away with it. And as far as I'm concerned, the house of cards is now falling down at last.
Well, doctor, you've done tremendous research, obviously, to bring out this, make this case, and it certainly is quite viable from what I'm learning and will continue to learn. And the other thing, doctor, we have to remember, of course, that abortion is evil, and evil knows no rest. And once we allow and we provide an environment for which evil to start, it will only grow and grow further and further, which of course is what this, we've talked about this a little bit last night, is bioethics, which is a very important subject and needs to be talked about in government, and protecting the viability of the life of the child from the moment of conception, which is what we, the constitutional Republicans, believe that the Supreme Court needs to rule on. They need to provide constitutional protection for the child from the moment of conception, and then give it back to the states on how they want to handle some of the reasons given for abortions, which make up only 1 or 2% of the reasons for abortions.
I have 3 comments, if I may. I know I'm hogging the mic. I'm hogging the mic.
No, you're doing good. You did a great presentation. That's what I wanted to listen to.
I have 3 comments. When the Titanic sank, 100 odd years ago, I'll never forget seeing an image. I'm going to say it was the New York Times. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, give it to me. It's the New York Times. Okay. The headline, as big as Nixon resigns or, landing on the moon, was something like 1,500 souls lost. Souls. Souls.
That's a very good point.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
That was the language.
Even the newspapers recognize the sanctity of life. There were souls involved here. Okay. That's point number 1. The second point, viability. Let's just talk a little viability here. I had a chance to sort of mull all of this over. A trauma surgeon on the battlefield has to pick her way or his way over the fallen soldiers and decide, triage is the word, who is viable and who is not. Okay. So there's someone who's gunshot wound to the head, profusely bleeding, has a pulse, is breathing, is not viable. You call the chaplain. You see what you can do, okay, in 5 seconds. You come across another guy and he's got his leg blown off and he's hemorrhaging. You grab his belt, you apply a tourniquet. He's viable, but you don't have time to roll him over and see what else is going on. He may or may not live. And then you've got a guy who's got his hand shot off or whatever, or balled up in barbed wire. You can say, we'll be with you shortly, okay?
Yeah.
Not going to forget about you. So there's basically 3 levels of triage. Viability applies outside of the womb as well as inside of the womb. This is not just about the fetus. You go into the intensive care unit. You go into the intensive care unit. There's someone on life support. A friend of mine 2 years ago, this is one of the reasons I got involved in all this to begin with. Hit and run, taken to the emergency room, codes in the ER, goes to the CAT scanner, codes in the CAT scanner, comes back. She's a bag of blood and broken bones and ruptured organs. She's on life support. She is alive. She's not viable. Okay? You've got people who are brain dead. They're alive. They're not viable. Pull the plug, harvest their organs, whatever you're going to do. Viability is not something that applies just to the fetus. It applies to human beings. Do you have what is required to survive, either internally or externally? Okay, so stop with the viability. Okay, drop the viability. In arithmetic, remember in algebra, if you have a factor on both sides of the equation, you can erase the factor from both sides of it. You can drop viability. Drop viability. Okay.
An excellent point.
Doctors to the Supreme Court, they'll tell you. Get the trauma surgeons, they'll tell you. Okay, that's number 2. Number 3, standing.
Yeah, very good.
The case of standing.
Yes.
Does the government have a vested interest in the fetus? Well, not during the first 3 months. Excuse me, go get your doctors. Never mind the lawyers. Go get your doctors. Think back. You maybe remember this. Thalidomide. Remember thalidomide? Remember? It was a sleeping pill that was very well tolerated, and it was distributed and it worked beautifully, wonderfully, except for pregnant women who took it, had no problem themselves, none whatsoever. They were fine and sleeping great. Their children were born without limbs, with little flipper arms. Okay, what happened? The United States government, the Food and Drug Administration, moved in like a SWAT team, like SEAL Team 6 at 0 dark 30. They moved in and they were like, we have a vested interest in the fetus, beginning at conception, through the entire length of pregnancy, but particularly during the first 3 weeks, which is when the organs are formed. The United States government has spent tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, I would say, mandating the insurance companies spend this as well, to prove that the drugs that are put on the formulary do not harm the fetus. Never mind the mother, can't give the mother anything, but the fetus per se, during the first 3 weeks of the fetal life. The United States government, the executive office, Congress, the FDA has been involved in protecting the life of the fetus for 50 years, and they've spent money doing this. Okay?
Great insight, Doctor.
This needs to be brought to the attention of the Supremes, okay? Because the Supremes can only consider what's put in front of that, what they have, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. They have that as the reference point and the argument that you make, right? And the physicians, as far as I know, were nowhere to be seen or were very much bringing up the rear when it came to Roe. So there's no question that life begins at conception. I mean, I can
and doctors, just let me interject.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, finish up.
I can pull a biology textbook that's 50 years old, okay, that will say, what is life? You know, we have geology and we have biology, and what's the difference and what is the criteria for life? The fertilized egg meets the definition of life, okay? It does. We can bring a million textbooks. into the courthouse and say, life begins at conception. And then we can bring in a boatload, a truckload, 18 wheels at least, okay, of documentation that the government has been involved in protecting the life of the fetus during the first 3 weeks of its existence. And we can argue about viability being, okay, look, viability does not apply to the fetus, it applies to everyone. Yeah. And if you want the right to an abortion, amend the Constitution. And good luck with that.
Well, great information you've given us here, Doctor. I would say that we look back to the Roe v. Wade court. We did a series called Abortion versus Natural Rights that I talked to you about, 6 different videos. We did a deep dive into Roe v. Wade, and the court never considered the humanity of the child. They were inconclusive in granting the child a human life, recognizing the child's humanity. It was solely the sole purpose was to allow a woman to have an abortion. And of course, we could say that the Wade part of the equation did not do a very good job in presenting the viability of the life of the child to the court to begin with. And the other thing that's interesting is that the states from the very beginning, the great William Blackstone said that all the way back in the English common law, from where we get our law from, they recognized the child in the womb as have already been born, and that child was sacrosanct and was an individual human being, and that the laws, all of the state laws were there to protect the children as well as the mothers. But the Roe defense said no, that the state laws were only there to protect the mothers, and they excluded the children. But the founders, and as we've mentioned with William Blackstone, thought that it was impervious to protect the child from the very beginning, from conception, and treated the child as already being alive. And of course, we see that with laws where mothers pregnant mothers are killed, perhaps in a homicide or in a car accident. And again, the child's life is recognized as being inviolable and individual.
Well, not only that, but the child has a separate ICD-10 code, okay, CPT.
Yeah.
If you want to know whether something exists in science, medicine and science to the rescue, I say. Yeah. The child, if we know that a mother can die and a child can live, a fetus can live. We know the fetus can die and the mother can live. We also know that the entire medical profession and health insurance industry applies 2 different ICD codes to these entities. Mm-hmm. In fact, the child is a separate, unique genetic entity.
Yes.
Live from conception, imparted with a soul, okay? Mm-hmm. And that the government has been involved in protecting the rights and the health and the welfare of that child forever conceptually, and at least for 50 years in terms of how we are spending our tax dollars to protect the fetus from the harm that a drug might do to the fetus during the first 3 weeks of life. So in all fairness to the court, I don't think that the justices denied the humanity. Again, I have compassion for the fact that they've got a constitution and a Bill of Rights. That's their reference, okay? And they've got the arguments that are being made. And if an argument is not made, it's not going to occur to an attorney, okay? If it's not there somewhere in the law, you're going to have to bring evidence forward. And I say to the physicians and the surgeons of the world in the United States, time to speak up. The data are there, okay? Let's talk about the scientific evidence we have, and then say to our society, because God was very gracious in giving us a constitutional democracy. You want to change the Constitution, then by all means, try and change it. We'll show up to tell you what we think.
Right. Well, the provision is there, and we've said all along that the court needs to recognize now, especially with the advances in science and all the ultrasounds and the testimony of professionals and experts like yourself, that now is the time for the Supreme Court to rule.
Yeah. Let me jump in with one more thing.
In favor of the child from conception.
Let me jump in with one more thing about the ultrasound. We have these heartbeat bills, right? Heartbeat bills.
Yes.
So if you can detect a heartbeat, then no, you cannot abort the child. So I said to myself, okay, if you can detect the heartbeat, so that's like if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound? We'll go there and listen. Okay. So I said, I went right to my embryology textbook. I should probably just do research full time. This kind of investigative stuff, I love it. So I go to my embryology textbook and I'm like, when does the heart start to beat? When do you think the heart starts to beat? Take a guess.
Well, it's been from what I've seen, 18 days from conception.
Actually, according to my book, we'll see, we can have dueling textbooks, but my book says 29 days, first heartbeat. Now, 29 days is about the time that a woman would first think she might be pregnant. She's missed a period and she goes off to the drugstore and she gets her pregnancy test. At about the same time that her pregnancy test is positive, the heart beating. Now, what I would say is we got a really smart, biotech entity, going on in this country right now, industry, right? Somebody somewhere make a device. I know you can do it to detect that first heartbeat. I mean, if the CIA, okay, can gauge the stride of somebody in Afghanistan crossing the strait, somebody else, DARPA, probably already knows how to do it, can detect a heartbeat in a fetus at 29 days. Now you detect a heartbeat at 29 days, you got a real problem.
Well, Doctor, it's been a great pleasure, and let's just kind of wrap this up and tell the people how important it is for them to contact their representatives right away and let them know of your displeasure with the Reproductive Freedom Act, which is S3030 A4848. Let your representatives know that you want their no vote for this. And Doctor, what you've done is given us a whole different perspective on the impetus and the motivation for this bill. And this is why I hope that people will share this video with their friends and their families and talk about it and let the people know that this unjust bill must be stopped, not only for the reason that it takes the life of a human being and takes the unalienable God-given right of that life, but also because there's money to be made in the abortion industry. How horrible.
In fetal tissue. So I would say, if you are opposed to money laundering that shows up in your inbox as some bill that you're going to pay for somebody else's project, say no. Call these guys and say, no, I'm not paying for this, okay? And, I'm not voting for you if you're going to vote for this, okay? So if you're concerned about the money issue, call them and tell them, no, I'm not paying for it. If you're concerned about the moral, legal issue, then you say, really? You're actually going to be tearing apart fully formed human beings? That's what you have in mind? No. And if you have concerns about fetal tissue, about the National Institutes of Health funding research where they take a human ear and grow it out of the hindquarters of a mouse, which they're doing. If you're concerned about that and all the money, call them and tell them, no, you're not going to do that either. So for all these reasons, I think you need to emancipate yourself as a citizen and tell these people, don't even have it as a thought. Don't even have it as a thought.
Very good. Very good, Doctor. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Kathleen Ruddy, and we'll have you on again.
Okay.
I'm sure I'd love to have you back on. Let's keep in touch and let's let the people know to make sure that they get a hold of their representatives and tell them to shoot down, kill the bill, kill the Reproductive Freedom Act, which is far from freedom. And do this immediately. Call your representatives tomorrow, make your voice heard to stop this bill in its tracks. Doctor, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And
Thanks for having me.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
My pleasure. We'll have you again. And let us remember what Abraham Lincoln said, Doctor, at the very end of all things, liberty for all. Thank you and good night.